All right. Okay. So I think we'll begin. It's 12:03, so let's start. So welcome everyone to our How to Sell Any Customer on Your Azure offering. Um, so today with us we have myself and two guests. So my name is Roman. I'm the product marketing manager here at Sherweb. We have Charlotte Urkel from Microsoft, who's the partner technology strategist. And we have Will Aminsky, VP MSP Sales, Nerdio. The agenda for today is pretty straightforward. So I'll take some time to introduce those of you who are not working with Sherweb to Sherweb. I'll tell you briefly what we do and what we offer. Then Charlotte will present the Do More with Less framework for Microsoft. Followed by Will, who will go into the bit more technical stuff and the actual meat of the presentation. At the end, we'll have some time for a short Q&A, and I'll speak about the following event that we'll be doing next month. So more details to come towards the end of the presentation. So who is Sherweb? So for those of you who are not currently working with Sherweb, let me give you a brief introduction. So Sherweb is an all-in-one cloud marketplace with an ever-expanding portfolio of innovative products, handpicked and pre-vetted for our partners. As a leading CSP, we work hand in hand with our partners to help them grow their managed service offering. We support partners with business strategy, cloud services, operations, go-to-market expertise, and a host of other benefits. So we service close to 7,000 partners while maintaining a high level of customer service and relationships. Our cloud marketplace offers productivity, security, infrastructure, voice, business apps, and partner service solutions. Some additional services that we offer include personalized help desk services, dedicated account managers, and access to pre-sales experts to go beyond traditional reselling. So all in all, we take care of everything from A to Z. So in a nutshell, that's Sherweb. Now let me pass the speaker role to Charlotte to talk about the Microsoft Do More with Less. Charlotte, to you.
Thanks so much, Roman. You can hear me okay?
Yep.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks again, Roman, and thanks, Sherweb team, and for having me, and thank you everyone for joining today. As Roman mentioned, my name is Charlotte. I'm a partner technology strategist here at Microsoft, working very closely with the Sherweb team. So today we want to talk a little bit about the Do More with Less messaging that you've been hearing about from Microsoft, specifically as it relates to Azure. So when we think about Do More with Less for Azure, we think about optimizing cloud costs, recognizing the full value of cloud, and customers really need to optimize their existing investments and can achieve that through three things. First is controlling cloud spend. Second is improving workload efficiency. And third is really thinking about making hybrid environments more productive for them. And there are really three core business outcomes that we see customers looking to do when they want to do more with less. First is migrate and save. Second is optimize their cloud costs. And third is really investing to drive their business growth. So when we think about the first pillar of migration, migration is really about moving on-premise workloads to Azure to get fundamental cost savings and efficiency gains. There are both implicit benefits like energy and IT infrastructure savings, and there are also explicit benefits such as leveraging things like Azure Hybrid Benefit. And really, why do companies want to migrate? Well, really, it's about lowering their costs, increasing their ROI. And this can be manifested through saving on existing investments and things like getting the sustainability benefits from running in the cloud instead of on-premise. And then outside of that initial migration, organizations really need to position their cloud investments to save long term, be it a fundamental shift from CapEx to OpEx, or selecting a platform with saving mechanisms that are flexible and can grow with their business, or really prioritizing sustainability in their platform selections. On the optimization side, That's really about using tools to reduce existing cloud spend, but also ensuring cloud workloads are set up in the right way to optimize cost and performance. So it's really about leveraging tools to help forecast, monitor, and identify ways to reduce actual dollars spent through using products like what you'll hear about today from Will and the Nerdio team. Optimizing the workload is really all about the way a cloud workload is constructed and run, often being referred to as well architected. And Azure provides a deep library of reference materials to help customers implement with best practices. And the Nerdio team can also help with that. And under the reinvestment pillar, that's really where we see customers leveraging the gains from migration and optimization and putting them to critical aspects that will help drive their businesses forward. So why does an organization want to reinvest? Well, we see a few things. Really, it's to position themselves to accelerate growth on the back of their savings from migration and optimization. And while simply reserving savings can be a good strategy, we do find many customers are realizing the need to better prepare themselves for things like security or leveraging those savings to uncover new business opportunities. And so now I'd love to pass it over to Will to share a little bit more about the various cloud computing tools that can really help you do more with less in Azure.
Great, thank
Thanks,
you. Let me share my screen.
Will, 2 seconds, and before you jump in, there was a question that came up in the chat asking us if people can ask questions throughout the presentation. Absolutely. If you have a question, type it in the chat, and we'll take a short little break to answer your question. So absolutely, type away. Sorry, Will, go ahead.
No problem. Everybody can see my my screen here, okay?
You got it.
Yep.
SMB computing? Yep. Okay, great. Good. So thank you, Charlotte and Roman. I appreciate it. I wanted to start today just talking a little bit on the back of what Charlotte was mentioning in terms of the state of SMB computing today in 2023, because we've seen rapid market evolution by virtue of many things that were out of our control. And these are things that I think our customers as managed service providers are feeling pressure on. Pre-COVID, most people were in the office. You had some people that were in and out of the office, and maybe a few people that were fully remote. But we're really seeing the numbers starting to change in terms of the way employees want to or need to be able to work. And I think that's really important to think about when we're looking at the cloud transformation and the opportunity that's available for all of you as managed service providers to be able to provide high-end technology and value to those customers. Modern IT has some key building blocks. For anybody who's at an MSP, I put zero trust security at the top here for a reason. Security is absolutely paramount these days. You have less and less control when you start looking at people working from anywhere, being in the office one day a week or a couple days a week instead of fully in the office. And you don't have that centralized, trusted corporate network in many cases because it can bring some challenges into supporting those remote workers. Now, I'm a Microsoft geek, so I love the unified modern identity, and I think that's a really important piece of the security side of things as well. If you have a single place for your identity that integrates with everything else, it allows you to kind of flow all the way through the tech stack. I use my Microsoft identity for just about everything that I do. Anytime I have to go and use an application or look to get a new application, that is a question that I'm asking because I can provide that zero trust framework with that single identity and control that I can get from Microsoft products and services. We see more and more customers today wanting to put data in the cloud or needing to. It might reside in multiple locations. It might be hybrid. It might be backed up to the cloud. But again, much more data is moving there. I remember the early days of me selling cloud computing 10 years ago, and storing all of your data in the cloud was, in many cases, was cost prohibitive. But people have wanted this for a long time. The costs have come down significantly, so it's much more affordable, and I think that's helping to drive some adoption in terms of storing the data up there. On the endpoint side, this is something that we focus on and think about a lot at Nerdio. we're seeing more of a mix of endpoint devices kind of being demanded from our customers. You have the traditional MSP model where it's a managed physical device. Whatever the OS might be, you as the MSP are managing that. You have your RMM agent on it. You're providing security and remote help and patching and all of those things that MSPs do day in and day out. But we're also starting to see more and more customers want to bring in unmanaged physical devices. And I know that makes me cringe just as much as it might be making you cringe. And then there's also been certainly an uptick, especially with work from home, with virtual endpoints. We're talking about things like Azure Virtual Desktop, Windows 365, or maybe more legacy technologies like terminal services. And then the application front, from my point of view, this is driving a lot of the cloud adoption as well. We are seeing more and more what I would call modern applications. They're browser or mobile app based. No longer do you need, as commonly as you used to, a server to be able to run that application. Software developers are building these apps as cloud native, but as an MSP, we still have many applications out there that are legacy. So application developers who don't want to write it for the cloud, it's too expensive for them to do it. We have our customers who will not let go of their old line of business applications because they don't want to reinvest and their software vendor is not forcing them to into the latest version. So we still need to be able to support, in many cases, those legacy or client server based applications. And I think this brings in some unique challenges for that modern customer, that if us as MSPs start building our solutions and putting frameworks around, we can really see a significant win rate when out there talking to prospects and trying to bring them in to our MSP. So when I'm meeting with an end customer who's maybe been holding on to older technology, a little bit afraid of making investments, they're also dealing with some challenges because they have more hybrid or remote workers. These are the types of things that I'm talking about that I find really give me a huge leg up in their eye, because the customer says, wow, Will, you really understand me. These are all things that I'm dealing with my business. And if you understand the challenges that I'm facing, I'm probably guessing you have some way to be able to solve that for me. We need to be able to protect their data. If we have employees that are working from home, or somebody like me, I'm on the road all the time. How do we make sure that Nerdio corporate data is being protected on my Surface or when I'm at home and maybe using my desktop? Employees, they want to be able to be flexible. And you could maybe take this flexibility box and talk about it in a number of different ways. You know, one common one is I see employees wanting to be flexible in working on any device that they want to. Some people want their Macs. They have to have their Macs. I see lawyers want this a lot, but all their apps are Windows based. So that doesn't really work too well, right? So we need to be able to find solutions for that. I also look at flexibility from a growth or a labor shortage perspective. I think this is really important and something I'm seeing more and more MSPs talk about with their customers. It is very hard to find talent and employees across just about any industry today. And there's always somebody that can pay a little bit more. And so if you can start moving things to the cloud and doing things and having more of a modern approach to your IT stack, well, it now allows you to hire employees that maybe are not in your exact geography. Being able to manage multiple devices for each user. I know myself, I have 4 devices that I use regularly and I flip through, and we're seeing that more and more. 5, 10 years ago, everybody had one device. A lot of times it was a desktop, it was anchored to their office. But now we need to be able to make sure that anything that has access to that corporate network, that corporate data, can be secure, but also get access to that information when they need it. Infrastructure flexibility is a huge one. Businesses are changing rapidly. There's a ton of M&A across really most industries today. So being able to have flexibility around this, instead of being locked into purchasing a server, holding on to it for 3 or 5 years to get our most value out of it, and hoping that that infrastructure investment is going to support me for the next 3 or 5 years. I don't care what anybody says. Every single customer wants to keep their IT costs low. I've been on many meetings with end customers, and I ask them what is most important, having the best technology, having the best performance, or having the lowest cost. And fairly often people will say cost doesn't matter to me at that much. It certainly matters to some extent, but I care about performance. I care about flexibility for my users, some of the reasons I have on screen. And then you go show them a price, and their eyes start popping out of their head a little bit. They're saying, wait a second, this is way too expensive, right? So we need to keep costs low if we want to drive that adoption. And then also, when you think about employees working from home or being remote or hybrid, maintaining that high employee productivity. We don't want to allow users to be able to work from home and then realize it takes them 60 hours to do a 40-hour job. All right, and so that's really where I want to introduce some of the Microsoft technologies that we're seeing are being very successful with managed service providers to be able to start adopting and modernizing and bringing these customers that we have existing or new prospects into this more modern world. So if you're not familiar with Intune, it's a set of technologies that helps you manage that unified identity I talked about before. It also does applications and devices, physical and virtual. Intune is not just an MDM solution. It is a full suite of products that sometimes have overlap with existing products that might already be in your IT stack. So why, as an MSP, would I think about using Microsoft Intune? Well, number one, it's included in most Microsoft 365 plans. So many of your customers, if they have Business Premium, they probably already have the licensing for this. And again, the tools here can start to augment or even replace some of the existing tools that you have in your stack. Maybe some more of these legacy tools like your RMM or security. And the more tools that you have in your stack as an MSP, the more complications you have, the more cost you have, the more attack surfaces that you have. And increasingly, things like these traditional, more legacy MSP tools become more of an attack surface. They're becoming targets more and more every single day. And then we also have very popular, and we're seeing high growth, Microsoft seeing high growth if you look at their earnings statements, Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365. These are these cloud delivered Windows desktops. It allows users to stream their own individual Windows 10 or Windows 11 desktop to any device in any location. They can have their iPad. They can be on their kid's gaming rig. They could be on their Mac. It doesn't matter what device, but it is all secure and it is delivered to them in a very familiar format. It's a Windows 10 or Windows 11 OS. So there's really not much or anything for them to have to relearn. And the great thing about delivering endpoints out of the cloud is you can now start to guarantee that end user experience. Where this really starts to come into play are those customers that are holding on to or not able to get off of those more legacy client server applications. They can't have completely modernized cloud delivered apps. So they still need a server. And if you want to take that server and move it in the cloud, like many organizations and MSPs are doing, you may be introducing latency because now that server is not sitting right next to your users in the data closet in their office. It's sitting in the cloud and users are spread all throughout the country. So by taking the desktop and putting it right next to that application server, we can guarantee a high-end user experience. We can also gain control. We're seeing customers that even have all modern apps choosing and deciding to go to virtual desktops with AVD and Windows 365 because it's a lot more cost effective than it used to be, but it also allows the organization from a corporate level to gain control over the user's experience as well as their data and their access to the systems. The user can grab any device that they want. They simply log into their virtual desktop. It is all secure and encrypted and protected. I can give access to data that they need and deny access to data that they do not need. Make sure it does not leave my cloud-based corporate network.
Yeah, well, quick question from the chat.
Yes.
There's a question that goes as follows. So with Windows 365, if a user had a Mac, then no need to run Parallels?
Correct, correct. You are delivering that Windows desktop out of the cloud. So they'll be on their Mac OS. They'll have an application from Microsoft, the Microsoft Remote Desktop app, and they will simply launch either their individual applications. So they'll run and kind of look like they're just running on the Mac instead of running a Parallels virtual machine on the Mac, or you can stream a full Windows desktop. I find many times Mac users, they really like that Mac experience. So a lot of times they might just have QuickBooks, let's say. So you can stream just QuickBooks down to that Mac. It'll look like it's running locally on the Mac, but it's streaming out of the cloud.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Great question. Really great question. All right, so what I wanted to do next, after kind of setting the tone, talking about some of these technologies where we're finding MSPs have lots of success in modernizing their customers, I want to show you what this really looks like and how easy it can be for all of you to start offering and delivering these solutions at a high level to your end customers. So I grabbed a very common scenario that we see here at Nerdio. A lot of times MSPs, when they're thinking about modernizing customers, they want to start with something small because it's maybe a little bit less risk and for your team to start learning how to price and package and deliver and support these applications or these new technologies. So in this scenario, what I'm giving you is a 7-user CPA firm on the East Coast of the States. So we just ended up tax season here in the States. So, they're working tons of hours trying to get their tax returns. I talked to my accountant, 15 times yesterday, trying to make sure I'd meet that deadline. And then in the off season, they really don't work all that much, right? They're doing some things, but they're not working 12, 14, 16-hour days in the off season. And again, this is a very common scenario because a lot of these organizations have older, aging technology, and they want to modernize. They want to be able to work from home, work from anywhere, work on any device, have corporate data and control. So a typical scenario with this would be they have on-prem servers, maybe a domain controller and an app server running QuickBooks and their file storage. And quite honestly, you could switch out QuickBooks with just about any accounting application, which most businesses need anyways. It could be Lacerte or Sage, or it could be Thomson Reuters. There's a whole alphabet soup of them. But again, I think QuickBooks is kind of the most common that we see, but we do see all of those other applications. And
quick question. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Great.
I think it's a very good question because it goes back to the basics. Someone is asking, what's the main difference between AVD and Windows 365, and why one would use one over the other?
Yeah, so there's two, I guess I would say, main differences to consider right now. So with Azure Virtual Desktop, you can do what's called a dedicated machine, or you can also do Windows 10 or 11 multi-session, which is more similar to what we used to do with terminal services. Multi-session means you have one virtual machine with however much RAM and CPU is needed, and multiple users are sharing that RAM and CPU. They still have their own individual desktop, their own apps, their own backgrounds, their own shortcuts, all of that. So from their experience, it's their own machine and not shared with anybody else. But in certain scenarios, we can drive costs down because they are sharing RAM and CPU with multiple users. If we look at Windows 365, it is always a dedicated persistent desktop. There is no notion of this Windows 10 or 11 multi-session. It is one VM for one user. And then the other main difference is the way that the two solutions are priced. Windows 365 is more of a product. It's sold out of the modern workplace. It's sold as a SKU. So Microsoft, you buy the SKU and you kind of get everything that you need pre-packaged for you at a flat rate per user per month. It does not matter how often they use it. So if they use it all the time, awesome, that's great. And if they hardly ever use it, that's okay too, but you're going to pay the same price. With Azure Virtual Desktop, it is more of a build your own solution. So you put together the amount of storage and RAM and CPU. It is not a predefined bundle like Windows 365 is. And so with that, there are different ways you can pay for it. You can pay per hour. So there may be pricing advantages with Azure Virtual Desktop to say, well, this user needs to access QuickBooks 10 hours a week because they're a remote employee and they do the bookkeeping part-time. So I'm only going to spin up their desktop for 10 hours per week. So maybe it's a little bit less expensive than Windows 365. So those are kind of the key differences, the way that they're priced and maybe some of the options. Now, if your next question might be, well, that's still a little confusing. How do I know which one to choose as an MSP? Well, there's a couple things that I would say to you. Number one, bring whatever scenario you're thinking about to the Sherweb team, to the Nerdio team, and we will help you evaluate it. In about 10 minutes, we can go through and show you the differences for your unique customer in terms of cost, how you'll support it, what it looks like for the end user, so you can really make an educated decision. I think the other thing that I think about is if I'm an MSP and I'm just getting started in virtual desktops, I've never done terminal services. I've never done maybe some other flavors of virtual desktops. I really like Windows 365 because it's packaged, it's a SKU, it's out of the box. There's less for my team to have to learn out of the gate. In some cases, you might pay a little bit of a premium for that because Microsoft is taking over some of the work. But again, your knowledge doesn't have to be as high. Your support, you're not going to spend as much time supporting them, so your labor costs are reduced. If you're an MSP who has experience, familiarity with virtual desktops, you've done a lot of terminal services or Citrix or VMware or whatever flavor it might be, you might be a little more comfortable with jumping into Azure Virtual Desktop and saying, I'm going to take on a little bit more of this because I can customize it for each individual customer instead of having just more of a prepackaged solution out of the box.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, where was I in this scenario? Okay, so they have minimal resources typically for these applications like QuickBooks, right? 2 cores, 8 gigs of memory, tiny database to run their financial app. And again, a lot of times this is the only application that I need a server for. They don't want to go to QuickBooks Online. It's different features, it's priced differently. They want to hold on to QuickBooks Desktop. And in this case, we could say, this customer already has Business Premium and maybe some files in SharePoint and OneDrive, maybe not. And so what I want to do is actually go through and price this out for you. So let me switch tabs here. I can find the right one. One of the other people on here, just confirm you guys can see this, my other tab.
Yep.
Got it.
Fantastic. So what I'm showing here is the Nerdio cost estimator. So many times when I talk to MSPs, I ask them, have they ever gone to the Azure pricing calculator? Or they tell me, yeah, well, I've gone to the Azure pricing calculator. It was kind of complex. I've never done this before. I don't really know what I'm doing in here. And it seemed really expensive. So what we've done at Nerdio is take that Azure pricing calculator and we've turned it into an MSP format pricing tool. Now, we are connected to the Microsoft or Azure pricing calculator via an API. So it is the exact same data and is the exact same information. It is just presented to you in a different manner to make it a little easier for an MSP to be able to price this out. So what I've done ahead of time is I've selected my region, Canada East. I've chosen Canadian dollars here, and you can toggle any region, just about any currency here, so you know exactly what this is going to cost you. And then we start filling out this form, right? We want to try and make this easy again for an MSP. So in this scenario, I want to give all 7 users virtual desktops. I'm not going to do in this, at least pricing demonstration, I'm not going to give anybody a dedicated personal machine. I'm not going to give anybody a Windows 365 dedicated machine. And I don't need any GPU. They're a CPA. They're not a designer. They're not using AutoCAD or Bluebeam or Revit or Photoshop or anything like that. So pretty basic environment. And then we start scrolling down, and now we have some defaults built into the Nerdio calculator. Sherweb and Nerdio also have a number of people that will help you build this out your first couple of times that you're using it. But essentially what we're doing here is we're building out our scaling because, as I mentioned before, with Azure Virtual Desktop, they're kind of like Legos. I can dump out my big tub of Legos and build anything I want. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to build this optimized for this customer. I'm optimizing for both performance as well as cost. I want performance high and cost as low as possible. So what we've said here is we're going to give these 7 users a pool of resources. They're going to have 2 4-core 32 gig of memory machines shared amongst all 7 users. And because they tend to work many hours during tax season, we will leave one of these machines on 24/7, 365. So half the users can work anytime that they want. The other half, the second machine will power on when it's needed, and it will power off when it's not needed. You will pay per hour. And that's where this box really becomes important. We want to price out how many hours per week we expect them to work over the average year that they're working with my MSP. And you'll notice as I make changes here, my pricing is going to update. So we have our total, and then we also line item everything out down here. So what I'm going to do is there's CPA, let's say 55 hours. They work 55 hours per week on average throughout the year. You'll see my pricing change. Now I'm going to keep scrolling down. I don't have any users here that just need Intune only to manage their physical endpoints. We're going to provide every employee with a virtual desktop so they can access that client server application they do not want to get rid of or bring to the cloud in a different manner. From there, you can price out servers. Now, we don't need any additional servers in this environment. For anybody who's been doing terminal services or familiar with virtual desktops in the past, kind of think about this as a pool of terminal servers. They're going to be Azure Active Directory joined. So I'm going to get all of my identity from Azure Active Directory. I'm going to manage the user's policies, not with group policy, because you don't have that with Azure Active Directory, but I'm going to manage them with Intune policies. And we're finding that there are enough Intune policies today that are similar or the same as traditional group policy that you really don't need domain controllers, especially in these small end user environments. So no domain controllers needed, but I still have policy. I still have security and control. And then I also don't necessarily need a server for the application. I can run that application on the disk on this machine that is also serving up their virtual desktops. Because again, I want to keep your costs as low as possible. I want to keep your labor costs as low as possible. This could be kind of cost prohibitive if I had to add 2 virtual machines in here, a domain controller and an application server. So this is how we keep your footprint very small, but also keep all of that security and zero trust and modernization that I talked about earlier. Now, the next thing that we've built out in the Nerdio calculator is 365 licensing and other licensing from Microsoft. This is not available in the Azure calculator. If you were using Microsoft's tool, you'd have to separately go to Sherweb and go price out these other licenses. We want to make this as easy as possible and give you this central location to price everything out. Now, in this case or the scenario I showed you, the customer already owned their 365 business premium licenses. So what I can do is I can say, well, rip this out of here. I don't want to price that out. They already have them. And you'll notice it says they own them and my price has changed. Or again, I can toggle back and purchase them. So we give you a lot of flexibility here with how you're going to price it out. We can do things like Defender and SQL and Intune remote help. So there's a whole bunch of different things you can do. I also have this box checked just for way of demonstration purposes. This is a way for you as the MSP to price out any other third-party services that you would like to in this single pricing tool. This could be additional security products from Sherweb. This could be your remote help or support desk. So you can title anything you want, put your charges there, and the number of users. For simplicity's sake, I will take that out though. Then we have some other options in here that we can do. Now, some things are grayed out. The reason for this is the way that I've built this environment, there's no need and you can't use hybrid benefit. So we're going to protect you to make sure you're not selecting things that don't make sense with the way you've architected or priced out this environment. We're going to use reserved instances for that machine that is always on. It's a way to get a flat rate billing from Microsoft Azure, not paying per hour, because Microsoft gives you a very large discount by reserving compute, RAM, and CPU in their data centers. You're helping them capacity plan how much they actually need because you're selecting it for your customer. And these you can cancel at any time, so you are not locked in as an MSP for 3 years, even if you do this, so you can cancel. We can price out backup. Maybe we'll use a VPN for some scanners in their office if they have one, maybe not. There are some other things that you can do, other forms of Active Directory and additional storage. We're going to tell this customer to use SharePoint or OneDrive for everything else. We have things like bandwidth and storage operations and the user's profile data. How much storage do we need that? Their Outlook cache. their app data, their backgrounds, their shortcuts, all those unique identifiers about that user. They're going to have their own storage for that. You can also plug in your CSP discount that you get from Sherweb. So for Azure and for licensing for 365, if we were pricing that out. Nerdio provides discounts for our software based on your volume or your partner tier with us. So you could select that. I just had it at the lowest tier. You can add in your margin. So how much margin do you want to make if you want to use our tool for that? And I just explained most of those boxes so you can see how quick and easy it is. Once I click this view cost button, I have my price. Now I know I can take this customer, this CPA firm that is 7 users, I can get rid of all of their on-premise equipment. They can keep using their same endpoints that they're using today. No need to refresh those. All of the computing power will be done in the cloud. So even if they're starting to slow down, that's okay because they're just using their physical endpoint as a window into the cloud where all the computing is being done. On the right of the pie graph, you can see the buckets of cost. So we show you how much Azure will cost. Remember, this is their compute, their storage, their backup, their bandwidth, really everything that they need. We have the cost for Nerdio. So if you do decide to use Nerdio, our tool will help you provision this automatically. It will also help you manage it in an ongoing basis. It will do that, turn on the machines when the users need them. And then we can also see when the users don't need them and we can power them all off. So that is some of the technology that Nerdio brings to the table here. Then we break down everything that you're getting. What is your backup schedule? How many licenses do they have? How many servers or VMs do they have? One is on all the time on that reservation. One is pay as you go. And then you can scroll down in that Azure cost, that $355 per month, we show you how we got to that number. So if you wanted to, you could go to the Azure calculator and match that up. We show you how much backup is costing, how much your VPN costs and the desktops, and how much we're saving you by turning that machine off when it's not needed, only being on 55 hours per week. So we show you all of that. You can save this quote, you can print it as a PDF, you can do many, many things with it. But again, hopefully I was able to illustrate here, how quickly and easily we can take you from working with on-prem equipment and on-prem refreshes to very, very easily, without any prior experience, being able to go meet with your customer or prospect, ask a few questions, come and work with Nerdio or Sherweb and run through this. Now, if anybody says, well, that's great, but I want to do it on my own, I don't want to call you guys, that's okay. So if you go to our website, getnerdio.com, you can actually use the cost estimator. It is in the top right corner of all of the pages of our website. So getnerdio.com. There is a free version of that cost estimator. It's the same tool I just showed you. So we'd love to have you go there at some point if you ever want to play around with it without necessarily reaching out to anybody. So I'll pause here. I don't know if any questions came in the chat before I get back to my slides.
Yes, well, quite a few questions actually, and I just want to also be cognizant of the time. We have 19 minutes left, so I'll try to ask you the questions and let's try to provide brief answers if possible. Yeah. First question is the Nerdio app free to use for our customers?
Great question. So the Nerdio application is not free to use for your customers. Now, we give every MSP free licensing for themselves for testing purposes or to run in production. But there is a cost, and that would be included here. Now, if you look at this, I don't know if you can see it very well on the screen, but the Nerdio cost is baked into this pricing. So it's all bundled in together. We would charge $112 per month Canadian to use our product. And again, if I go back to the savings, we are saving you $174 per month, more than what we cost by using the optimizations for turning machines on or off. We bill per named user per month, either Intune user or virtual desktop user.
Perfect. Next question. So someone said, I'm glad you mentioned Bluebeam. I have a client that is trying to move all to the cloud, but they have A, Sage on-prem, and B, Bluebeam. What is a possible solution for that? They have BizPrem licenses and most files in SharePoint, but are using WebDAV to map a drive for easy access to the SharePoint folders needed to build out their Bluebeam files.
Yeah, so you can absolutely do exactly the same scenario that I just showed you here. You do the same thing for them, except you typically have two different buckets of users in that case. So that's where I would come into the GPU area for my Bluebeam users. And I would say I need, X number of users need to use those GPU resources. And you can even see here, this is grayed out because there's no GPU available right now, at least in Canada East. So I'd select another region, and then you would give them those high-end GPU cards. And I've seen it time and time again. It works so well. This is not the old days of cloud computing. We have people running high-end 3D modeling, people doing Teams calls, 4K audio, video for YouTube. All of those things work. So 100%. It's a little bit of a deeper conversation, but at 100% you can do it. And we see MSPs doing this all the time. And if you want to keep using SharePoint, that's totally fine as well for their files. Or you could give them some file storage directly in Azure.
Okay, next question. Is the Nerdio app similar to Google's Cloud One assessment tool?
I have no idea what the Google One Cloud Assessment tool is, so I can't answer that. I will say there is a great tool from Microsoft. If what I'm thinking the Google assessment tool is called Azure Migrate. Check that out. If this sounds similar, it is a tool that you can run on your customers' on-prem or existing cloud workloads, and it will assess it, and it will tell you what you need if you wanted to bring that into Azure. But if you get with the Sherweb or Nerdio team, we can save you a lot of time probably and help you assess it as well.
Perfect. When would you need to add a server for application? Based on specifications, what about static data from the application? When the disk is re-imaged, wouldn't that static data be lost?
Yeah, good question. So somebody that's probably looked at this a little bit before. So a couple different reasons why you do the server. One, to your point, if you re-image these machines, you will lose that data because it is static and it's sitting on the drive essentially on this machine. So what some of our partners do is they treat it like an old terminal server where they don't use an image and they don't re-image it. They put their RMM agent on the host and they just keep updating it, everything right from their RMM agent. So they're not re-imaging. If you're not comfortable with that, it is a little bit outside of what Microsoft recommends. There's a couple different things that you can do. You can do Azure Files if your application will support that. It's like a file server that does not sit on this machine. It attaches to it. So when you re-image, that data will stay intact. Or you could add in an application server so you can re-image these machines. And then lastly, the other time where you would want an application server is if the application is old and it only supports Active Directory with traditional group policy. Sometimes these application vendors have not caught up. The policy that's available in Intune does not necessarily support that. So in those cases, you need a domain controller in most cases anyways. And at that point, you can do a combo, DC/app server. Or you could separate them out and have two individual servers. So these are the types of things that the Sherweb and Nerdio team are very trained up on and can help you navigate in your specific scenarios.
Thank you. So there's one question that I could answer here. Is there any free training on how to use this Nerdio Manager tool? The answer is yes. As mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, we do have plans to have a hands-on lab next month. So details to follow with the recording of this webinar. We'll be able to send you a link where you could register to this hands-on lab. Places are extremely limited, so first come first serve. Will be also running that hands-on lab. So I know there's many questions still coming in. So if you have specific questions on how to do things, how the manager works, please register for the lab, and we'll be able to help you out.
Yeah, please do. The lab's going to be really great. We're actually going to get hands-on. You will get hands-on and build these environments. We'll have a couple hours for questions and building and all of that. So I highly recommend that. That's going to be maybe one of the quickest ways to learn and kind of roll up your sleeves. The other thing that I'll just plug here briefly as well, if you go on our website under for partners, we have what's called Nerdio training camps. We are doing them all over the world, and they are completely free. They're 2 days. So it's a little bit more of a time commitment, which is why I recommend doing the lab if you're still maybe on the fence or aren't able to get out of the office. But we will be, again, all over the world doing these training camps. There is zero cost for them. And we also pay for your hotel and breakfast and lunch as well for both days. We do a full day sales training and we do a full day technical hands-on training as well. So lots of training opportunities after this webinar.
Okay. Well, we have many questions in the chat, but I'm going to let you resume. If we still have some time at the end, I'll try to answer some of these questions, but let's get going because we have 12 minutes left.
Yeah, and so everybody, just because you've had so many questions, I'm going to zip through some of these slides so we can try and make sure there's enough time for some of these additional questions. So what I was planning to talk about is packaging, right? And really packaging is really important because once you get your cost, you need to be able to sell this and package it appropriately so you can make the most margin. And I like what we call the traditional MSP sales model. This is where you determine your cost like we just did, you add your margin, you put it together as a single bundle for this specific customer, and you sell it at a flat rate. And you can purchase Azure in a very much a flat rate manner where you can be protected. So you don't need to worry if they use it too much and your costs balloon. We can help you with all of that packaging and protection. And there's some really great benefits for the customer because they're going to get a lot of flexibility and low cloud infrastructure costs. And then for you, you can quickly and easily get started with this. I just showed you how quickly and easily you can price it out. Now you can make a ton of margin. You can quickly put your package together. And the big things to keep in mind when you're doing this is you have to price out each one individually. So make sure you ask the right questions. Discovery is very important, so we accurately price this out. When your team ultimately goes to build this, which we'll cover on the technical longer form webinar, you have to follow the build. If I planned or priced out those 2 machines with 4 cores and 32 gigs, but my tech or my provisioning team builds 2 machines that are 8 cores and 64 gigs of memory, my price is going to be off. I'm not making the money that I thought it was. I might even lose money. So it's very important to kind of follow the build after you've sold it. So there's some things that you'll need to think about with this as well. Number 1 at the bottom here, do not expose Nerdio to your customer. Just like your customer doesn't care what RMM tool you use as long as they stay up to date and they have remote support. They don't care what you're using as your management tool for Azure. So start thinking about that type of stuff. If you do not have answers to questions like you in Discovery, we're going to have to estimate high to protect you. So make sure you do that and make sure that you're pricing everything out, including your CSP discount, so you can calculate your true margin. But the way that it is done is pretty simple. We take the cost, $68 in this different example per user per month. And then what we do is we'll add our margin. So $68, I'm shooting for a 50% gross margin. Then I get my Azure retail bundle, $136 per user per month. It's going to give you everything you need in Azure, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, also includes your margin. Then you can add your managed services to this. I'm saying 125 per user per month. And I can go to this customer and I can say for your 7 users, it's going, or 12 users, whatever the number is, we're going to charge you $261 per user per month. It's going to include all infrastructure, all support, all security, all identity, all 365 licensing, everything together at one flat rate per user per month. So you can be very protected here. And I challenge you to go and try and make 50% gross margin selling on-prem equipment. You're probably not doing it. But we regularly see MSPs get margins this high. The typical is between 35 and 65% when selling Azure. Some benefits, again, I'm going to move through these fairly quickly. We can cover these on the other webinar. We also do cover these in our training camps, but there are some huge benefits which are important to understand for customers. They do not have to replace their devices. You also, to log into this, there is no VPN needed. So they simply grab any device and they log in with their Microsoft identity and have everything that they need. They don't have to worry about real estate. Charlotte mentioned this at the beginning. I don't have to worry about power, cooling. I don't have to worry about having an office or a data closet and maintaining that. All of those things go away because everything is delivered out of the cloud. Microsoft employs over 3,000 security engineers. Last year, they stopped the largest DDoS attack in the history of the world. So they are out there. It's a shared responsibility model. They don't do everything for you, but there are a lot of things that Microsoft kind of takes onto their shoulders that you as the MSP does not have to worry about or think about or be faced with. It lowers your labor costs and increases security. Corporate control, I think I talked about a little bit. You have total control. If an employee were to leave your customer's organization, you can click a button and stop their full access for everything. And maybe, or maybe not, they ship their device back. That's a separate battle. But worst case, all they lost was that couple $100 device because you don't need a high-end device. If you are having trouble sourcing hardware, we could spin this up in Azure tomorrow. So you can move very quickly for those customers that do have those short lead times. And you can also scale. At any point, I can add storage, I can add CPU, I can add RAM, I can decrease it. You click a button and you pay for it appropriately. So it gives businesses that scalability that they tend to be looking for today because they don't know where their business is going to be in 3 years or 5 years. It gives them that peace of mind, being able to upgrade at any point. And Microsoft is constantly upgrading what they have in their data centers. You can click a button and you can upgrade to the latest RAM or CPU processors very quickly and easily. And then lastly, I'll end with Nerdio Go Live Engineering. Not only do we help you on the sales side, but we help you on the provisioning side. We have a full process where we give you one of our engineers to help your team execute and build and make sure that your customer is going to have the results that you promised to them in the sales process. This is completely free. You have it's a dedicated resource. You're not calling into a help desk and getting a random engineer. And we do this day in and day out. We help MSPs with somewhere around 250 to 350 new customer deployments every single month. So we have the experience that you can lean on. So with that, I'll pass it over to Roman. I'm actually going to give you control if that's okay.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Will. So Will and the audience, we have a long list of questions. We're going to try to answer them in as many questions as possible. So first question is, do we have a pricing calculator for Azure SQL Server?
Yes, that is built into the Nerdio cost estimator. So yes, you can do that either per month, or you can use something called hybrid benefit and purchase the licenses up front, or you can bring your customers' existing owned SQL licenses. So all of that's in our calculator.
Perfect. Are the Azure licenses, Windows 365 or AVD, etc., under Microsoft NCE, where they need to commit for a year for best price?
No, so they are all month to month. And actually, Azure and AVD is day to day. You can pay per print consumption. But yes, it is not part of the NCE program.
Perfect. What if the customer had a legacy system that does not support Windows 10 or 11? Is there an Azure option for bringing, say, a Windows Server 2012 system into Azure?
There is. You can run Server 2012 with your RDS cows, but the great thing about that is you can run through Microsoft gateways that they provide for free. So you still don't need a VPN. You don't need to manage your remote gateway server, your HTML5 portal, all of those things that Microsoft recommends. So you can fully do that. We support that in Nerdio as well.
Perfect. Says, Will mentioned that as CSP, we can break a 3-year reservation. Is that right? Without penalty?
It is correct. So in Microsoft's documentation today, they are not charging the penalty. I would expect them to maybe start charging the penalty. Charlotte, I don't know if you know more information than I do. I would expect them end of this year, next year to do it. But I've run the numbers. If you come to our training camp, I can show you the math. As long as your customer uses the machines for 3 months, it is cheaper to pay the early termination penalty if they start charging it than it is to pay the higher pay-as-you-go rate. The ROI on every machine in Azure that I've looked at is 3 months. So do the reservation even if you know you're going to cancel in a year, because you will still save money.
Does the Nerdio tool we can use from your side in our own environment have any cost? Is it an Azure app?
Yeah, so there's no cost from Nerdio for our licenses. There is a cost from Microsoft because you are hosting your own unique Nerdio application in your MSP's subscription and tenant. It runs about 125, 150 Canadian. A lot of people put that in their Microsoft Partner Network subscription where you get credits from Microsoft, so that absorbs most or all of the costs in many cases.
Okay, perfect. So at this point, I know there's still a few questions left, but I would invite anyone who's attended today to register to the hands-on lab. The hands-on lab is going to run for about 3 hours, so plenty of time to ask all of your questions, get a personal touch from Will. So really, I strongly encourage you to register. The link will be provided to you when we send you the recording of this webinar. The lab itself, you can already put it on your calendar. It's going to be Thursday, May 18th. But again, an official registration link will be provided to you. Just want to remind everyone, places are extremely limited. So again, I would highly recommend you to register as soon as you see that invitation. And yeah, on that note, I want to thank everyone who attended our webinar today. As a reminder, again, the recording will be sent to you shortly. I would say in a couple of days. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us. Reach out to Sherweb. Reach out to your account manager. If you don't have an account manager, just go on our website and just send us an email. We'll be able to get in touch with you and answer any of your questions. So again, on that note, thanks for attending. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Charlotte. So yeah, have yourself a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Great questions.
Have a great day.